What's up, football fans? It is another Saturday of football. It's week 12, and this is probably by far one of the most important weeks of the season just because of the possibilities of dreams being crushed and the outcomes that can unfold just because of what happens in today's games. Real quick, I want to go ahead and summarize some of the news that has came around college football from the past week. The biggest thing being the CFP dropped Tuesday. With that, the biggest takeaways being Miami going at 15 and Texas going to 10. To me, I don't think Miami being the highest ranked ACC team is accurate. I would think it would go to Georgia Tech. One, Georgia Tech is only a one-loss school. Two, they're their highest rated ACC team. Three, when you look at their strength of schedule, it is better than Miami's because their opponents have more wins. I mean, in the ACC play alone than Miami's. So I think that's a situation there. Two, Texas being at 10, jumping BYU. I don't think that should have happened. I think BYU should have fell to 10, keeping Texas still at 11, Oklahoma at 12. I don't think BYU should have dropped out of the top 12 or out of the top 10 just because of what happened against Texas Tech. Because when you look at that game against Texas Tech, that wasn't just like hey, they played bad or they're a terrible team. No, when they played Texas Tech defensively, they showed up. The first half was a defensive game from both sides, Tech and BYU. And then when you look at what they did, especially with that fourth quarter or that fourth and goal stop to keep the game 13-0 going into halftime, that was a very big momentum swing for BYU. Their biggest problem is it was false starts and alignment issues and this and that issues, creating flags for their offense, putting them in bad situations and then putting their defense in bad situations because of fumbles on returns. And even with the fumble on the return, they still stopped them from extending a lead to multiple scores in the first half. I mean, that is the type of ability that BYU was playing with in the first half of this ball game. So to sit there and say BYU was outclassed is not a very accurate statement. They were now hostile environment. You want to criticize them for their play in a hostile environment? Take that. It is 100%. You can take that, run with it. But to say that they were outclassed on the field because of how they, because of ability, that's not an accurate statement. BYU, they just could not get over the hostile environment. Then South Florida being the first group of 5 team ranked in the top 25 is very important because that indicates at the end of the year, if everything plays out the way it should play out and South Florida wins out and wins the American, they will be the group of 5 team getting in because they would be the 5th highest conference champ. As long as the ACC don't fall at any point, it will be an ACC, Big 10, 12, and SEC with a American comp. But if the ACC has Duke coming out, that's something that hasn't been talked about a whole lot. If Duke wins the ACC, you're going to have JMU in South Florida in as conference champs if JMU becomes the 5th highest, because I think a lot of people are confused on that criteria of making the playoff as a conference champ because you haven't seen a Power 4 conference fall. Like, you've seen them all be undefeated or 1 loss, 2 loss, guaranteed they're going to be a top 20 team, 15. Now you got ACC sitting in this weird spot to where if a group of 5 team jumps them and they continue to fall down in the rankings and they have a four loss Duke team win the ACC, then obviously the 1 loss JMU is going to get ranked higher. So there's a lot right there that they're going to really showcase the criteria of making the playoffs and if they're going to adjust it because a Power 4 team in the out of the ACC did not make it instead of a group of 5 made it instead of them. So it's real interesting going down the college football playoffs right now. So with that, there's some other things I would like to talk about. Speaking on college football, their head chairman stepped down, Mac Rhodes, Baylor's AD. He's also stepping down from Baylor. Yes, there's an investigation. Not quite sure on the details. I tried to find it, but I couldn't really find much on the details involving that situation. But he stepped down both as an AD and the head chairman. Arkansas's AD stepped in to become the new head chairman. So I don't know if that's going to impact the way the committee votes, how we see certain teams in the rankings, but that is definitely something to keep an eye on. Over in the Pac-12, the Pac-12 and USA signed a new 5-year media rights deal, giving 22 regular season games over to the USA Network. Plus, when you look at the way how they get their media rights deals, I think it's very interesting because they have multiple source outlets between USA, CBS, so CW. Like there's a little three-way partnership that they got media rights with, not just one sole. So I think that's very interesting to see. And then lastly, kind of the coaching, because it's 12 and we have some very big headlines coming up. Lincoln Riley reaffirms his commitment to USC, so he's saying he's not going anywhere despite the rumor will rocking and rolling. And then Pat Narduzzi, his statement about gladly getting to beat 103. Now, he's come back, game day, I'm watching game day currently. He's come back and said that this game matters. We're going to focus on the game. We're going to focus on the outcome of this game. Every play. That's a very different attitude that he had come Monday. So I think it was the national media, because I don't think his point was like, oh, we're just going to go get beat. I think he was just trying to say like ACC is more important than this game, but that's just something he should not ever like really covenant or cover, because when you look at it, every game matters at the end of the day, and you got to just tell that to the media. Secondly, we finally got some coaching updates. James Franklin is in talks with Virginia Tech. Now that's going to be a big move right there in terms of talking about some injuries and player updates. Wisconsin has a true freshman starting quarterback versus Indiana today. UCLA's Nico Lalavea is out versus Ohio State. And then R. Thomas, DN out of Oklahoma, is very unlikely to play. So those are kind of the biggest, because Oklahoma versus Bama is going to be a big game. Wisconsin is going to need a quarterback. They haven't had a good quarterback all year long. So, something's going to be needed right there. And when you look at the slate for today, there's a lot of different games. But before we talk about today's slate, Clemson beat Louisville. One of the big moves that is needed for Miami to move up in the ACC is Louisville to lose. Well, that happened. Clemson got the job done, beat them 20-19. Louisville just made bad mistakes. They just killed their own drives all game long. And when they missed that field goal in the late half of the fourth quarter, I knew at that point the game was over. It was still 2019, and, a lot of ball could still be played, but they missed the field goal to go up by 2. It was like 6 minutes left in the quarter. I was like, nah, game's over, because they just couldn't do anything and sustain any type of drives. It was just like drive killer after drive killer. So Miami is now moving up just a little bit more in the ACC. They're now went from the 7th best to the 6th best. They're having to bank on SMU to lose 2 more games. They got to bank on Virginia to lose 2 more games. They got to bank on, beating Pitt to get the head-to-head win over Pitt. So there's still a lot that has to go down. And not saying their shots are done, but they do have a very dangerous NC State team. NC State's a very 50-50 team. This team can show up and play like the next best thing, or they can show up and get played. So they got a little test ahead of them. They can't be looking ahead and looking at the outcomes of other games. They got to focus on what's in front of them. Same thing between Virginia and Duke. This is another important ACC outcome. You got a Virginia team who just lost to Wake Forest last week, a Duke team who's only lost in the ACC is to Georgia Tech. They went into a shootout with Clemson, so they can't go down to the wire. They've done it already. It's going to be very important. It's a home game for Duke, and Virginia has a tendency of playing very close games, and I figured it would catch up to them at some point. Now, Chandler Morris is not playing, or he's reported to not play, and he's reported to play, so it's a very 50-50 on that situation. If they do not have Chandler Morris, I do not see them winning this ball game. If they do have Chandler Morris, then the outcome would probably lean Virginia. And this is a very important game, because if Virginia wins, that will instantly knock Duke out of the equation, and Miami will jump Duke and become the 5th best team. If Duke wins, Miami will still sit there at number 6 under Virginia, a 2-loss team in the ACC, because of the common opponents. when you look at the common opponents record, Virginia has a better record against common opponents because they both played Louisville with a Virginia win over Louisville. So Virginia will have the tiebreaker over Miami, keeping Miami in 6th. So I would say Miami, if I was Miami, go ahead and get the teams out your way now, because if Duke wins, I don't see Duke slowing momentum up with who they have left on the schedule, because they got Virginia, North Carolina, Wake Forest. I think those last 2 games are very winnable for a Duke team because Wake Forest and Duke are very similar. They're really hot, then they're really cold. So for me, I think if I was Miami, I would want Virginia to go ahead and beat Duke, and then let Virginia lose their rival game to VTech. Now, still, it's a shaky matchup. Anyways, enough ACC talk. Let's go ahead and get into our game day picks. So for me, there's a lot of important games up and down the slate. Obviously, could talk about Iowa, USC. That's a very important matchup. I think Iowa's defense is going to be top notch. I thought last week their defense and special teams could get the job done, but Oregon did a good job on pinning their special teams in bad situations. You got South Florida versus Navy. I would love to talk about this game in a lot more depth, but just the way Barron Brown has been playing, I mean, that offense has been throttling their opponents. Utah versus Baylor, the way Utah's been throttling outside of their losses to BYU and Texas Tech, I don't think that's going to be too much of a conversation. Even though BYU offensively struggled a little bit, TCU's defense is nowhere compared to Tech, so I think BYU handles the job at home. Arizona and Cincinnati is going to be a really interesting one. Cincinnati back in the top 25, having to play a 6-3 Arizona team who just got a close out win against Kansas. So this is going to be a very interesting matchup, because if Cincinnati can just continue to hold on and some things play out in the Big Ten, we could very well see a swap in the rankings. But if everybody just wins out, then their hopes are done. But if something lucks out for them, they could definitely get back. They just got to continue to win their games. And then Michigan, Northwestern, there's been a lot of talk about Northwestern being a quality team this year. I would love to see how much of a quality team they actually are playing Michigan. And then Michigan, this is a big hope game for them. If they beat Northwestern, they stay in contention for the Big Ten, being one loss in the Big Ten, because their only other loss is the outside Oklahoma. So very important game. And same deal. They get a very important 12 o'clock game against South Carolina. South Carolina's done tested Alabama. South Carolina very well can test A&M. So very important game for that team. But the games that I'm circling on my radar, starting us off at 12 o'clock, Notre Dame, Pitt. I think this game for Pitt, to me, I would say is very important. Now, I would have had South Florida here, but I mean, either way you look at it, Pitt, just like Navy's, is about to get throttled. I think Pitt's going to keep it close. Like, they're going to show early on, like, they can play. But I just think with the manpower that Notre Dame has, it's just going to be a little too much for Pitt to handle, because that's an offensive juggernaut. I mean, you got 2 running backs that could be very easily, I think they're both currently top 25 running backs in the entire country, might be just top 15. I mean, you got 2 running backs like not Jeremiah Price, but Price can go on to any other team and be the number 1 running back. That's how dynamic he is. They're both dynamic in the special teams. They're both dynamic in the run game. Jeremiah is a little bit more of a pass catcher. But, I mean, you got 2 running backs that can run up and down the field from East Coast to East Coast, North and South, better than anybody in the country. And they're on the same team. CJ Carr has been playing lights out for a redshirt freshman. He's by far the best redshirt freshman in the country. I think when you look at the entirety of redshirt freshmen, there's only 2 quarterbacks, I'll say, as a redshirt freshman that have been playing lights out. That's Drew Messmaker and CJ Carr. I think those are the 2 best redshirt freshmen in the entire country. And I'll talk about Messmaker in another video, or I'll drop a video about him on my channel. So with Notre Dame, I think the firepower offensively is there. Defensively, they're starting to figure it out a little bit. I think they've figured out where their defense has went wrong compared to early on, allowing so many points. So for me, I think all things are clicking in the right place for Notre Dame. I would love to see Pitt win, just to shake up the college football rankings. But to me, I just think Notre Dame is starting to figure it out defensively at the right time. Offensively, they've been clicking. They've clicked better than they ever have. So for me, give me Notre Dame. And then you got Alabama versus Oklahoma. If Oklahoma is out on Thomas, I think that defensive line is going to take a big hit. They need that defensive line. Now, the one thing I will say about Alabama is they don't have a run game. Oklahoma stopping the run is going to be a very easy. I mean, it's going to be an easy cakewalk for them. That's like an easy A on a graded assignment. You know what I'm saying? So that's going to be a very easy task for Oklahoma stopping the run. So for me, what I would say, I think the biggest task will be stopping the pass, stopping Ty Simpson, getting to Ty Simpson and disrupting his style of play, because obviously Ty Simpson is the focal point of that Alabama offense. Now, I think it can be done, but I also think Alabama has been very excellent on offense in terms of the passing game. And if they are without Thomas, we possibly could see a better game in that run team. But give me Alabama. In the game that everybody's watching at 7:30. I'm watching, you watching, your parents are watching, your granddaddy's watching, your best friend's watching. Georgia versus Texas. You got number 5 versus number 10. Granted, Texas should be number 10. They're only number 10 because of bad ranking play or bad rankings. But regardless, it's a top 10 matchup. It's a home game for Georgia, an offense that has been clicking. You got a quarterback in Gunnar Stockton that is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the entire country. Nobody believes in Gunnar Stockton. Everyone thinks, oh, Gunnar Stockton is just this phallus, or how would you put it? This just undesired quarterback and a guy who just can't get the job done. He doesn't have the tools to elevate an offense. Texas is going to come in and they're going to handle business because they're playing an underrated or underdeveloped quarterback. No, look, first of all, if you want to talk about weakness on Georgia, talk about their defense. Talk about their lack of a pass rush. Talk about how their DBs can't cover for more than 2 seconds. Okay? We want to talk about weakness. Talk about how we have inconsistencies in our play calls. Okay? Do not sit there and try to say Gunnar Stockton is the reason why our offense is limited. Gunnar Stockton is the sole reason why we've won multiple games in close, tight situations. He's the reason why we beat Auburn. He's the reason why we beat Tennessee. He's the reason why we beat Ole Miss. I mean, the way he's played, he's the reason why we beat Florida. You know, he's the reason why we're stuck. So, and he even played good against Alabama. He couldn't necessarily win this game, but he kept us in the game. So, Gunnar Stockton, by far, is a lot better quarterback than a lot of people think. He is a solidified top 10 quarterback in the entire country. Texas is going to have a lot of work in containing Gunnar Stockton, because Gunnar Stockton isn't like any quarterback they've played outside of John Mateer this season. And even when they played John Mateer, he wasn't 100%. So there is a lot there for Texas to stop. They're having to stop a extremely mobile quarterback, a quarterback that's willing to take the hits. They played him in the SEC championship game, so they know what type of player he is. Now that pass rush for Texas is going to be next level. I think it's going to be the best pass rush we have played all season. So for Texas, they are going to need to, one, get the Gunnar Stockton undying pressure, stop the run, because Georgia has found the ability to run the ball again. Where this was last year and early on in the season, I have no idea. But they've figured out how to run the ball. They've had multiple great running games back to back this season. They're going to be able to stop the run, or if they can stop the run, it's going to be a tough day for Georgia's offense. But even if you pressure Gunnar Stockton and get the pressure on him, Georgia's going to be able to run the ball. So you're going to have to stop both aspects at the same time. So for me personally, I think Georgia is going to be able to get the job done. So for me, right now, I got Alabama over Oklahoma, Notre Dame over Pitt, Georgia over Texas. So that's kind of how I'm shaping up for this Express game day. I'm going to be dropping some more videos on my channels, so make sure you stay in tune to that, and always listen, like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one.